Okay, guys, so we are done including our GLs into our app. The next thing we have to look into is how to make it possible to make entries quickly into our application. Instead of going through the normal process of creating one form at a time, we want to look at a much more sophisticated way of making multiple entries into AppSheet. Okay, so over here, I'm going to demonstrate something that is the final product, and then we're going to look at how we are going to create something like that. So when you come here in the final completed version of our accounting application, you have what we call the past entry section. And the past entry section has two main components. We have the control and we have the entry section, right? The control section has certain fields. That's the entry date, that's the transaction date, the transaction ID, the description, the debit lines and the credit lines. Okay, debit line shows the number of debits you're going to have in a transaction, and credit line shows the number of credits you're going to have in that transaction. Okay, and on your right, that's where the main action happens. So you have all these information, entry, transaction date, description, account, debit, and credit, right? So what you do to pass an example, and I'm just going to demo this, is let's say we have a transaction we want to pass. Okay, we first selected the date. So you always start from the left, you fill in this information. So let's say 15th August is when we're passing the transaction for, that's the transaction date, even though today is 26th. And then we pass a description, let's say cash receipts from receivables, something like this, receivables, right? Receive cash from receivables. So when you receive cash from receivables, you know that it's going to increase your cash balance. That's you debit cash because it's an asset. And you're going to reduce your receivables balance. The amount you're expecting to receive from people is going to reduce. And it's also an asset. So an asset reduced, that's a credit. So you debit one and you credit one, right? Good. So once we have this one and one over here, that's fine. And then we click on this edit icon. You see that over here. So you see that there's certain sections that are grayed out. The ones that are grayed out are computation fields. They are calculated on their own by AppSheet. You don't need to do anything. The ones that are not grayed out are the ones that you need to do some inputs in there. So over here, we're going to select cash. You see that? Good. And then let's specify the amount. Let's say you're receiving 2,000 cedis. And then receivables. Okay, so let's say it's patient receivables. Okay, and the amount has to be the same thing, so 2,000, right? So you see over here, debit is 2,000, credit is negative 2,000. You can make it absolute, and then you can do that. So once you do this, all you need to do is click save, and then this will run. So you see in this case, this debit line is one transaction. This credit line is also another transaction. Ideally, in AppSheet, you have to open a new form for each line. Okay, but this view makes it easy for users to actually go through the process of recording transactions. That's the debit and the credit side of each transaction. So that's what we want to achieve. So over here, we're going to go to our spreadsheet, and then we're going to create these two account lines. So let me first create the first sheet, which is control. Control represents the left side of this particular view. Okay, it's going to have all the fields that run through all the transactions. So your transaction date runs through all the entire transactions. You have your transaction ID, same, the description is the same throughout. And then the debit lines and credit lines just lets AppSheet knows how many lines the user needs to be able to pass the transaction they're carrying out. Okay, good. I'm going to increase this a bit. So let me zoom in. Good. So this is the ID. Every table needs an ID. We know that. Then we have what we call the transaction ID. Good. Then we have our description. Then we have debit lines. Then we have credit lines. So these two are just going to be numbers. Okay, they're going to specify how many lines we need in each case. Good. So we have ID, transaction ID, description. I'm missing two fields. Let me bring them over here. So we have entry date. And we have what? Transaction date. Good. So entry date and transaction date is two very important fields. Good. I'm going to add another field over here or sheet over here called entry. Good. Now on this sheet, we're going to have ID. The ID runs through all of them. Good. That's a unique identifier. Then we have a ref. to the control sheet. So I'm going to call it control ID. Good. Control ID. There's an O over here. Good. So control ID. So whatever ID we're going to have here, in this case, every user is going to have one line representing their entries. So it's going to be something like this. So daniel.owusu.com, like this. And then the control ID is going to be the same value over here. So this is going to be a ref to that sheet. Good. So we have ID, we have control ID, we have what we call side. Good. We're going to have lines dedicated for debits and lines dedicated for credits. So side, so we have debits, and then we'll have credit lines. We'll have about, let's say, 20 debits, and then we'll have 20 credits. Ideally, you shouldn't have so many entries, right? Because it takes a while for AppSheet to load each transaction. So ideally, I wouldn't recommend it, but then we just make space for that. Good. So we have ID, we have control ID, we have side. Good. Then we have number of row. Good. So we have 1, 2. I'm going to drag this all the way to the bottom here. 1, 2, 3, 4. I need to add one more. So make this debit, and I'll copy this down. No. This has to be 20. Good. And then we're going to copy this. And we have this as well. Good. So basically what we have here is in the entry sheets, this particular set of rules will be dedicated for this user, daniel@gmail.com. Whenever daniel@gmail.com logs in, he will have access to these rules, okay? Because the control ID is going to specify his user email. Good. And then he can record his debits in these first 20 lines, and he can record his credits in this next 20 lines. Good. The reason why I'm going through this is so that every user can enter at the exact same time, like allowing for multiple entries. Other than that, we'll just have one section and then every user uses that. But then in the event where you have multiple users in the app, we want to avoid that. Good. So we have this, we have that. And then the next thing we're going to do is, so control ID side number of rules. Good. And then now that we have this in place, the next thing we're going to do is we're going to bring in the fields that relate to the GL, because at the end of the day, we are passing the transactions from the entry sheet and moving them to the GL sheet. So we'll come here to GL. Good. And then we're going to pick these fields. Just copy them, except ID, because we already have ID over there. We'll copy them and we'll paste them here like this. Good. So we have ID, we have transaction ID, entry date, transaction date, description, account, debit, credit, type, net debit, net credit, and statement. Is that okay? Good. So now that we have these in place, we can now go in and then we can pull our tables into AppSheets. But before we do that, I want to specify what the IDs will be. So the IDs are just going to be numbers running from 1 to, in this case, 40. Good. The next set of user is going to be the same format, but then these numbers are going to continue. So something like this. But this is going to become 41, 42, and so on and so forth. So let me copy this down to 80, I think. And this will be, let's say, charles@gmail.com. Good. So when charles@gmail.com logs in, he will have access to rules 41 to 80, and then he'll make his transactions or entries here. So in that case, Charles and Daniel can log in at the same time and make transactions, entries. Good. So now that we have this in place, we can go into AppSheets and pull in our tables. So we'll come here, click on the plus. Good. And luckily for us, our tables have already pulled in. Our empty sheet is also finally in now. Good. The reason why we have this empty sheet over here is because it's in the event when AppSheet doesn't load quickly to bring in our tables, we can just click on this empty sheet and then we can select. So hold on, let me do this again. Let me refresh here. click on this plus, click on empty, and then you have your tables. You can select them. So sometimes what I'm saying is these two might not load early enough, right? So you can use this as a means to pull in the tables. Good. Another reason too is keeping this empty sheet allows people who are not custodians of your spreadsheet to be able to access sheets within the spreadsheet. So once it's loaded over here, they can come here, click here, and then they will access actually to pull the table names and they can pull it through this means. Right? It's just an easy way to do this. Okay, let's add these two. We're going to click add here. Ideally, the control table doesn't have to delete. Okay, so I'm going to take off delete over here. And then we'll have ads. So I'll leave add over there. And then I'm going to click entry sheet. Click entry sheet as well. This, there are not going to be any deletes. We're just going to update and add. Okay. So it just spares upsheet the stress of creating the delete functionality as well. Okay, good. So we're going to go in and then we are going to do some cleaning. Okay. So what we're going to do is we're going to set the data types so that AppSheet is able to recognize each field for what it's supposed to do. All right. So here, what we're going to do is come here to ID. ID is set as email. I'm going to set it as text. Good. And I'm going to click done. Okay. Now transaction ID is going to be uniquely generated. So we're going to say unique ID. Like this. We're going to save this. Okay, so every time we start a new entry, we have a unique ID created. Another thing we're going to do is because we're going to be updating these fields and not creating new ones for each user, we're going to come here to update behavior. I'm going to say that reset on edits. So whenever this is resets, whenever this is edited, we want it to reset. So we're going to put true over here. Or we can just check the mark as well. Both should work. So whenever the field or the sheet is edited, we want this particular transaction ID should to update. Click done. Good. And then we're going to come to entry date. Entry date is going to be set to date and time. Good. Date and time. Should we ignore seconds? No. It's good to have seconds over there. We're going to come here to data validity, no? Over here, yes. I'm going to change this to now. I'm going to save this. Okay, I'm going to click done over here, and then transaction dates and initial value should be today. That's fine. I'm going to click done. All right, now the next thing we're going to look at is our description, which is long text is fine. Now, debit lines and credit lines are important, okay? So these ones are going to be numbers. Okay, so this is 1. No, not this. Minimum value is 1, and the maximum value, like we set in the sheet, should be 20. Okay, so the user can only set between minimum value of 1 debit line and up to 20 debit lines. I will highly recommend that you do not do all the way to 20, but then there can be some rare cases when a user might need that much. So why not? Okay, so minimum 1, this 20. Okay, so we have this in place. So we're going to click done, and we're going to see how this looks like. So I'm going to click views plus ref view. I'm going to click here. I'm going to call this control. On the control table, we are not creating, we want a detail view. Good, detail, good. Yeah. Now over here, when you come to manual, we have ID, we have transaction ID, entry date, we have transaction date, description, debit lines, credit lines. Good. Okay, so we're going to take this guy off, and then we're going to do a quick edit. Transaction ID shouldn't be quick edit. It's going to be transaction data as a quick edit. It's going to be description. We're going to have debit line, credit line. Good. Something like this. Is that okay? So you select the entry dates. like that. You provide your description, right? And then, oh, where did it go? Showing preview. You provide your description, okay? Then you can set your number of lines, so mark debit lines plus this. This cannot go below 1. That's good. Can't go below 1. Let me see if I try to enter 0. What happens? Okay, it says it's invalid and changes it back. Because I've not saved, that's why it keeps changing. All right, let's see if I can go beyond 20. So let's say 23. Okay, no, this entry is invalid. So 20. All right, good. So now we have this. I'm just going to click save. Okay, so that's done. And then we'll come here to data, and then let's work on the entry table as well. Good. So over here, the ID is a number. That's good. Control ID is going to be a ref. Good. It's going to be a ref to the control table. Okay, good. Let me just make sure the ID over here. All right, great. So it's going to be a ref to that. Now side is going to be debit or credits. Okay, this does not even need to show in the app. Does it? No, I think it does need to show in the app. So side is going to be debit and credits. That's fine. Number of rows is over there. Then we have transaction ID. Now, transaction ID is going to be generated in the control table. Is that okay? So we're going to compute this automatically. We're not going to let the user update this or change this whatsoever. Okay, so we're going to say control ID dot in the transaction ID. You're going to click save, click done. Good. That's going to be transaction ID. Entry date. Entry date is going to be now. It's going to be now. And click save. Good. And then we're going to say transaction date is going to come from the control table. Okay, it's also filled over there, so transaction date. I'm going to take this formula out. Save. Click done. All right. Description also coming from the control table. That's going to be control dot description. Save. Done. All right. And then account, we're going to select that. Debits is going to be number. Credit is also going to be number. We need 1,000 separator. This should be label. Click done. 1,000 separator label. Minimum value is 0. Okay, no, let's just leave the minimum value blank. Okay, so type, we have the type that's going to be selected for each account. So that reminds me, before we set the type, we need to include something over here. So over here, we have accounts, okay? But then we want to, in this particular app, ensure that the user can select the main account and specify the related detail account. So what I mean is, we're going to have a main account here, even though it's not in the GL, we're going to have a main account here. So if a user selects, for example, maybe trade receivable, right? Let me just see if I can receivable. He can specify the main account under the trade receivable. So maybe account belonging to Daniel. So Daniel's account. Do you get it? So when he selects trade receivable, then he has a list of all trade receivables and he can select the account that belongs to Daniel, right? Because other than that, if you have just accounts, you have a long list of accounts and the user has to scroll through to find which account he's looking for. But if you have a main account, you can just quickly select maybe expense, you can select utilities, and then you from that selection in the account section, you have maybe water, you have electricity, and then you can select which kind of utility you are looking out for. All right, I hope that makes sense. I'll come here and I'll regenerate this. Good. So main account is going to be a ref, and it's going to be a ref to the main table. Click done. And account is also going to be a ref. It's going to be a ref to the details table. Good. Now, what we're going to do is in the data validity for accounts, we're going to make this a very interesting formula that says that based on the main account selection, give me the related account detail accounts. Okay, so we're going to say select. Okay, now accounts COA details. I want account code details where account main or code main is equal to this row dot main account. So it's going to provide us a list of account codes in the detail sheet where the account code main is equal to what we just provided in the main sheet over here. Good. So I'm going to click done. We have that in place. It is debit and credit. Type is going to be a function of the account details. So I'm going to come over here. I'm going to say account dot type. Simple as that. Click done. All right. Now, net debit and net credit is going to be a very interesting one. I'll have to explain it subsequently when we've got an understanding of how the whole thing works. So for now, bear with me. So account main for statement, I'm working on statement. Account main dot statement. Good. I think we have everything in place. I'm going to click save. All right. So let's see how this also looks. View. We'll come to reference and then we'll create a new view. Okay, we're going to call this entries or transaction entry. Okay, so in the entry table, better if you look at this as a table. Good. Okay, so we have it this way. So name, Daniel, debit, credit, like that. Okay, you see we also have Charles over here. But what we want to do is this should be a quick edit table. So I'll scroll down here. I'm going to enable quick edits. Good. So when I click on this icon, let me save this first. Show this in preview. Good. When I click on this icon, why do I keep losing? Am I missing something? Okay. I'm not quite sure. Let's open this in a desktop view. Let's see. Let me bring this to menu. I don't know if it's because it's in the rev view, that's why it's behaving that way. When I click, okay, good. Maybe it was in the rev view. That's why. Okay, anyway, so you notice that certain fields are grayed out, right? Transaction ID, entry date, transaction date, description are all grayed out, right? Because you cannot edit these fields because they have app formulas over there. Now, main account, when I select a main account, let's say I select medical supplies, I should be able to select for medical supplies, the ones that are available. So you see, we have syringes, we have gloves, and we have what, bandages and dressing. Do you get it? Good. If I change this to electricity, I don't know what I have over there. So I have grid power, UPS, generator fuel and oil. We have prepaid cards, right? Good. Office furniture. You have desktop and off. No, that's it. So it makes it easy for the user to be able to specify the particular account he needs for the transaction. And the type where it says, okay, this is a debit type, and this is what balance sheet. Do you get it? Good. And then the user will specify whether they're debiting or credit. Now, if this is a debit line, the user should not be able to credit in here. And if this is a credit line, the user should not be able to debit in here. So what we're going to do, we're going to say that if this is debit, if this happens to be debit, if the side over here happens to be debit, then the user should not be able to debit. The user should not be able to credit. If it happens to be credit, the user should not be able to debit. Let's see how we'll do this. So we'll come here to the entry sheet, change this back here, and I'm going to say in the debit sheet, I'll come to update behavior, editable, click here, and I'll say that side, right, is equal to debit, and save this. Done. And then we'll come here to credits, right? And then at the same place, auto update or update behavior, we're going to say side is equal to credits. I'm going to click save. Done. I'm going to click save over here. So what this means is if the side is not equal to credits, so what this means is that if the side is not equal to credits, the credit side will not be available to edit. So let me do this, and then I'm going to click the edit pens over here. Then you see that over here, the credits cannot be edited, right? When you scroll down, you see what the debits cannot be edited when it's credits. You get it? Good. So that is how that is also done. So we have all these things done. Now what we need to do is to make sure that the user can only see rules that pertain to them, right? So we're going to put in a slice. I'm going to create a slice here. I'm going to call this users entry table. Okay, good. And then the formula is going to be simple. Over here, we're going to say user email is equal to the user's email is equal to control ID. I'm going to copy this. I'm going to save this. I'm going to come here to control and create something similar. I'll say users control table. And here, instead of the control ID, it's just going to be ID. Good. So in this view, over here, where it's control, I'm going to change this to the users control table. And then over here, under transaction, I'm going to change this to the users entry table. Good. So you see over here, this user, Daniel Finex Skills Hub, doesn't have any entry. Okay, he doesn't have any entry over here. So when you come to this table or this transaction entry sheet, he can't make any entry because there are no rules dedicated to him. Let me save this first. Okay, so by setting this to user entry table, you notice that when I click on show preview, right, this doesn't show anything, it's blank. That's because this email doesn't happen to be in any of the fields over there. So I'm going to change this email to what we have so we can see. So let me clear this. Let me close this. Good. So you can only see the rules that's dedicated to this particular email. When I change it to Charles, you also see that for Charles. So what we're going to do is let's create the dashboard view, and then we'll work on how to make every user see their dedicated rules. So we're going to click plus over here. I'm going to say entry, geo entry. Let's call it geo entry. Good. Now the geo entry is going to be a dashboard view, so you don't need to select tables. Just click dashboard. Then we're going to select first the control, which is going to be tall, blanky and tall, like this. And then the second one is going to be our entry. Where's our transaction entry? Good. So it's going to look something like this. Good. So we're going to have our transaction ID, transaction date, description, debit lines, credit lines. Okay, good. Now, we also want to make sure that if the person has selected one debit line and 20 credit lines, we usually see the first debit line that has one, and then we should see the 20 lines that have credits. You get it? Good. So we have to include another we have to include another condition over here. Okay guys, so I'm going to quickly explain the logic we're going to use for this table because it can be a bit difficult to understand. There are two tables, or there are two logics that we're going to be using. Okay, the first one is that the user's email must be the same as the email in the control ID. Now this is important because we want to ensure that the user can only access their dedicated rows, right? And the second thing is that the row should only show if the number of rows value of that particular row is less than or equal to the value indicated for the debit lines. You know, on the left hand side, right, we had the controls where we set the debits and the credits lines number we wanted, and we wanted the rows only show as many as we've set over there, right? Good. Okay, so in this case, there are two logics for the debit side and the credit side. So you see there's an or because we have a logic for debit and a logic for credit. Okay, so for debits, the two logics are one, the side has to be equal to debit, the row side has to be equal to debit. And the second logic is that the number of rows must be less than or equal to the control ID dot debit lines. Okay, the control ID dot debit lines comes from the control table. So the number set in there, the number of rows for this particular row must be less than or equal to that. Same goes for credit, just that the side has to be equal to credit and the number of rows must be less than or equal to control ID dot credit lines. I hope this actually makes it clearer for you to understand. Okay, so the formula we're going to be used is quite an interesting one. We have an AND formula over here. Good. And then we're going to have an OR formula here. Good. So because we're having OR because we have debits, conditions for debit and conditions for credit. So if you are debit, you use a debit, or you are credit, you use a credit. So the OR plays our role. Then we say AND again. Good. And then now the conditions for just being debit. One, the side has to be equal to debit. Right? That's the first condition in the AND. And the second one is that the row number, so number of row, okay, must be less than or equal to, so the person selects maybe 15, you select one up to 15, so less than or equal to okay, I forgot my image in there. All right. Okay, so the condition has to be less than or equal to, what is it less than or equal to? It's going to be less than or equal to, we're going to bring a square bracket over here, control ID dot open brackets debit lines. So this one says one, the side is debit and the number of rows is less than or equal to the debit lines have been set in the control table. Right? Good. We're going to copy this, bring a comma here, and paste this over here. Right? So this is going to now be credits, and then this is going to be credits lines. And we're going to close this here like that. Good. So it says unable to find function control ID or am I specifying something wrong here? So end, this is all. This is end. The main comma here. So blah 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 blah. Let's see. End user email equals to control ID, comma. Good. So we have this. So let's save. Great. So now if you look at this carefully, you see ID 1, debits 1 row, then credit, we have 1 all the way to 20. As I reduce this, this is also going to reduce to 17. It's going to reduce to 4. It's gone. Let's come back here, views. Where are you? Showing preview. Okay, so that's how it's going to work. So ID, control ID, and all that. Let me save this. Okay, so we've put in a very important formula that helps the user to select the number of rows they want, right? So if you come here and you select, let's say 3, you have only 3 rows showing. You see that? Good. So you have 1, 1, 2, 3. Then you have this one, 1. Good. Now, the user doesn't need to see this. These are just helper fields that help AppSheet work. So we're going to take all these fields away. I'm going to start off with transaction ID. So we'll come here to our entry table. I'm going to change this back here. Okay, good. So we're going to take ID out. We're going to take control ID out. We're going to take side out. We're going to take number of rows out. Leave transaction ID, leave entry, leave transaction date, description, account, main, account, debits, credit, types. Now, you see, the reason why we are going to take out certain other fields that ideally they should be there is because they are computation fields. The user is not going to make changes to them, and is going to see them in the control side. So fields like transaction ID and then entry date, transaction date, all those on description, they're all going to be on the left-hand side. So we're going to take all those ones out. Okay, so make it clean. We're going to take these guys out as well. Description, main account, the user has to select it, so that's fine. Debit and credit, user has to select it. Type, this, that, that. I'm going to bring back credit. I think I mistakenly took credit out, so let me bring them back. Before credit. Good, and I'm going to clear this. I'm also going to group by type. So we're going to have debits and credits over there. Let me save this. So let me come here. All right, and then let's come to geo entry and let's regenerate. Good. So if I come here and I set this to daniel@gmail.com. Good. Okay. So we have this in place. And then I think it's not type, it's side. There's a difference between type and side. Type is from the account, side is what is debit and credit? Good. Yes, great. So debit and credit, let's do it descending order. Great. And then we are going to also aggregate the amounts. Aggregate them. Good. Look something like this. Interesting. Fantastic. So when we click on the edit icon, that's what the user is going to see. The user is going to see transaction date, description, number of lines. He comes here, he selects, let's say, long-term loan, selects bank A loan, specifies the amount that, okay, I don't know if maybe they are repaying the loan or something. I didn't really think about this. I just selected it. And then he comes here and then he selects payments, let's say cash. Right, good. He selects cash and Fundex. There's an amount for that. Let's say that's 20,000. Let's say bank A operating, let's say 15,000. You see, but at this hand, you can't really tell how much. Okay, debited is straightforward because it's easy. But then credited, you have to calculate 20,000 plus 15,000. So what we're going to do is we're going to have something like a total for the debit and credit. So the user can say that, okay, I've passed 49,000 in debit, I'm passing this amount in credit. So I can tell that it's debit is balanced or it's not balanced. So we'll come here, we'll come into our table and the entry sheet, we're going to create the formulas that are going to help us to do this. Okay, so the formula is going to be very simple. It's going to be over here, just going to click a plus, and then we're going to say net amount. Okay, that's basically going to be our debits. Okay, plus credit. I know it doesn't make sense why you added the debits and the credits, but you remember what we did? We did initially that the user cannot debit and credit at the same time. So it's either going to debit or credit. So at the end of the day, we're going to have only debits and only credits. So the net is going to bring the two of them together. So we'll have the total of that. So I'm going to click save over here, click done. And then this is just to help us to create that functionality. So we'll come here and then under this, we're going to aggregate this by net amounts. Good. I'm going to save this. Let me leave here. Come back here. Good. So now we have our debits and credits over here. So you see debits, you see credit. When I click on this and I start selecting, and once I input a value over here, let's say 4,000, you see 4,000 pops up here. And then when I come here, everything that I enter here, so cash, let's say maybe petty cash, that's 1,000. So that's the first 1,000. I come here, I select maybe bank. I say that bank is also operating. That's how much? 3,000. Oh, what did I do? That's interesting. Okay. But I've never really found myself in this situation. Let's see. Let me refresh the app. Okay, it seems I lost that, but you get a drift of it, right? So it allows you to see the sum totals over there. Now, one more thing I want to do or add to this is for aesthetic purposes, right? Colors, right? Just to make the user know that, okay, debit and credit looks nice, looks fancy. So over here, you see the debit is green, the credit is red, right? We want to do something like that over here. So once you see this is green, this is red, that sort of thing. So we'll come to our app over here, and then we're just going to add this format rules over here. So click plus, click create. And we're going to say it's okay. Let's set this to the entry table. So green, formats, debits, green. The formula is very simple. It's going to be an and. I'm going to say that the side is equal to debits and the debit column is greater than 0. Copy this. Say we're going to format this side, and then we're going to format this guy. Hold Control, select the other column. So you select debits. So I've selected debit like this. I'll hold Control and select side. These two must be selected, and I'll click out of it, and it becomes gray. That means it's actually selected. Good. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to just make the text green like that. You see that? I can also put another condition here that says that this should only happen in the entry table. Okay, but then the good thing is the entry table is only used in one section. It's not used to create other views or other things. So that's fine. I'm going to duplicate this guy. Format, credits, red. And then I'm going to come to sides. I'm going to make this credits. I'm going to make this column credits. Okay, so credits also has to be greater than 0 before it works. These are all certain things we do so that the user knows. So side and then credits. Make sure the two are selected. Good. I'll make this red. So save. So let's come back here and let's see how this works. Cancel. Let's refresh our app. So I'm going to reduce this to 1. Is that okay? Then I'm going to try and pass a transaction. So let's click plus. Let's select, let's say, long term. Select this. So this is 30,000. Okay, and then each one. I'm just selecting anything. 30,000. All right, the colors didn't change. Have I done something wrong? Let's see. There are no colors. Okay, so let's see over here. Maybe let me close this. Okay. The username is gone. Like this. Okay, good. right? You see the colors are here, but then it's not showing here. That's sometimes with the desktop view, when you refresh it, but it might not show. You probably have to refresh here. Or sometimes you need to even create it all over again by clicking on this icon, and then the new updates will flow in, right? I'm not sure why this happens, but then yeah, there's some the issues with this. So I'm going to close the old one. All right, so as you can see, we are very much close to what we want to achieve. Is that okay? So when I open this in the tablet view, we have these entries over here, and then we have the debit and credit over here. So now, once the entry is done, this is going to move to the GL. Is it okay? It's going to move to the GL.